Hi, welcome to the instructional video for week 5. I hope you're excited for this week. Let's get ready for it by talking about our objectives. So for your language objective this week, you don't have a new one. We pause every few weeks to give you an opportunity to go back and to continue to work on the language objectives that you have previously been focused on. Maybe you need a little bit more time. Maybe there are some activities that you didn't have time to try before and we give you an opportunity to go and try them now. Maybe there were some favorite activities that your child had and you want to revisit those. Or maybe there were some objectives that your child struggled with a little more than others and you need a little bit of additional time to focus on those a little bit more. So this is one of those pause weeks where we encourage you to go back and look at the objectives, transition words, why questions, any of the other objectives, and revisit some of those. As I said previously in the very beginning, these language objectives are built over time and over sustained practice and over you modeling the language for them again and again and again. And so we want to make sure that you have ample time to continue to work on those. So feel free to go back, pick some of your favorite ones, some of the ones you think need more work, and just continue to incorporate those throughout the week in your everyday life and in talking with your child. For the cognitive objective for this week, we're going to dive into a new area of focus. And each time we have a cognitive objective that falls into a different cognitive area of development, I always go over that with you. So this week's objective falls in the category of focusing. Such a great activity for little ones. It's definitely an area that parents, their patience can be tested in when their little ones will not focus. And of course, this is a natural stage in their development. They naturally at this time, most children have very short attention spans, of course, unless it's an activity that they are very passionate about, then it seems like they can do it endlessly, right? But sometimes when we want them to focus on something, that can be a bit of a challenge, and that is natural at this stage. But as you prepare them for kindergarten and you start thinking about the types of activities that they will need to engage in kindergarten, and they may be asked to sit and accomplish a particular task from start to finish, or to sit quietly for a certain amount of time and engage in an activity, and we want to help them to be successful in that. So this is something that you can practice. To review the focus objective, focus refers to the ability to concentrate or center one's attention on a specific task or mental process. It is normal for preschoolers to have quite short attention spans, the amount of time during which they can sustain that focus. And their attention span varies wildly depending on their interest in the topic and other factors. So this is where you want to really focus on your individual child. And you want to pick a task that is both age appropriate and that you really feel there's the ability for your child to have a high degree of success in. We want to build everybody's confidence here, and so you don't want to pick something that is too much of a challenge. You would like to end this on a high note, so you don't want to get it to the point where they're very frustrated. You just want to incrementally build their focus over time. And you do that by picking activities that they are naturally inclined to focus on anyway. Pick ones that they would enjoy, or perhaps a new one. Pick an activity that maybe they've never done before. I'll give you some ideas here shortly. And again, you wanna focus on knowing your particular child. Do they need a distraction-free environment? Do you need to make sure that your home is quiet and the TV is turned off? And is there a particular time of day? Are they better in the morning to sit down and focus on an activity, or is it better after nap time? You want to set them up for success by really thinking about what your individual child needs in order to be able to focus. Are they, make sure that they're not hungry, and make sure they're not tired, make sure they don't need to go to the bathroom, so that they can really focus on this project. So again, these projects don't have to take a very long time. It could be what you're trying to do is have them accomplish a particular task from start to finish in one setting. So that could be putting together a simple puzzle, maybe around 20 pieces. And this is something that you're going to sit with them and help them with. Help them in a couple of different ways. Not only help them to complete the puzzle if they get stuck, and they, again, we don't want them to get frustrated. You want to be there to provide support and help, when it's necessary. But also secondarily to help them to refocus on the task if they get distracted, and help to gently prompt them to complete the activity before they get up from the table and move on to something else. So it could be the puzzle, it could be assembling a small Lego creation according to the instructions, depending on the skill and the interest of your child in doing something like that, or maybe a block tower, completing a simple, coloring page or paint by number page, or maybe something, a little bit more active. If your child really has trouble sitting at a table and focusing, in that environment, start with something that is a little bit more active, like tidying up all of their toys before bedtime, or, before nap time, something of that nature where they get to be a little bit more active. But the purpose of the activity is that, at the beginning, you sort of set out what the goal is. This is what completing the activity is. It's putting together the whole puzzle, or it's painting the whole picture, or it's tidying up all the toys on the floor. And that then in one single session or sitting, you're going to accomplish that task start to finish. And then you want to just, incrementally over time, give them slightly bigger tasks to do, to just help them to practice that. But again, you want to keep it to something that they can really be successful at, and then celebrate that success. Give them a high five, give them a hug, tell them what a great job that they did. Help them to really feel proud of that accomplishment, and just over time let them practice that skill of focus. It's not easy. It's not even easy for us adults. We have so many distractions going on. So practicing focus is something we can all benefit from, and especially little children. There's big benefits to giving them little tiny bite-sized incremental practice in focusing to help set them up for success in a kindergarten environment. So moving on to talk about our literacy objective for this week. We've had a string of a few consonants, and now we're back to a vowel. We're doing the letter E. So we're learning to identify the upper and lowercase e's, and also tell the short sound of E. And so E like an egg. Egg is going to be your cue word for this particular letter. So E is a little bit tricky, the short sound of E. It's and which is extremely similar to the short sound of A, which is a. And this is another one that's frequently mixed up. In my experience of teaching children to read, the short sound of E is one of the most difficult ones to get. And so what I would just do is, again, lots of repetitive practice over time is going to be the way to win this over. But, later on when you're practicing with your child and you ask them, what's the short sound of E? I encourage them to pause first and to think about their cue word. Think about egg and say it in their mind before they say it out loud. So when you say, what's the short sound of E? Encourage them to stop for a second and to think egg and say that in their mind, and then come out with it, like egg. That will help them to be successful at that instead of blurting out. Usually it's that comes out. So it can be a tricky one. Again, don't expect perfection right away. It takes a lot of repetitive practice to get these, especially these vowel sounds. The vowel sounds take lots of practice. Another literacy objective that we have for this week is recognizing the features of print, like, for instance, the title of a book, the author, the illustrator, the page numbers. And this is a really, really enjoyable activity, I think, to work on, because it just involves sitting and reading with your child. So as you sit and read a bedtime story, or at any time of the day when you read to your child, just take a moment to point out these features to your child. Point to the title as you read it. Again, you're also reinforcing as you point to the words left to right and top to bottom as you read, you're reinforcing that concept of print. But you're also explaining to them, this is the title of a book. By, and then read the author's name. This is the person who wrote it. Read the illustrator. This is who, drew the pictures in the book. And then you can point out, again, maybe the page numbers, which is another fantastic way to work on number recognition and counting, is to count the pages in a book. So you can maybe point out that as well. If you're reading a bigger book, your child may ask you questions about, for instance, what a table of contents is, or chapter numbers and things like that. But usually in just small picture books, there's not too many different features, to work with there. So title, author, illustrator, page numbers, that's usually enough. This week for math, We're finally bumping it up to count objects up to 30 and identify written numbers up to 20. So you may have already been doing this if you had mastered, counting to 20 and recognizing numbers to 10 previously. You may have already been going up to these higher numbers, but now we're going to expand it. And again, we're going to really work on mastery here. And those teens numbers can be tricky. Now that you're going to start working on identifying written numbers up to 20, this could take a lot of practice, and we provide you some activities to specifically work on those teens because it's easy to mix them up. They all start with a 1, and then you have those very tricky 11 and 12 that don't seem to follow the rest of the pattern. So take your time, really work on mastery of this, work on it in bite-sized chunks. Repetition is the key. And then as far as math skills, again, we have sorting and classifying objects according to one attribute into 2 or more groups. So this goes along with some of the sorting and classifying language skills and cognitive skills that you were working on before. It's also a math skill, and we're going to use it in math here, and I think that Legos are the best object to work with. Because they do come with multiple attributes naturally. They come in lots of different shapes, and they also come in lots of different colors. And so a great way to do it is just to dump a pile of Legos on the floor or on the table and help your child sort them by color. Sort all of them into piles of different colors, and then remix the pile and say, okay, now we're going to sort them into piles by shape. And it's actually quite tricky to transition your brain to thinking from sorting by color to, oh wait, now we're going to mix all the colors together, but all the rectangles are going to go together, and all the squares are going to go together, and all the circles are going to go together now. And it's not necessarily easy to do, but it is fun, and it's something that I encourage you to sit there with your child and do together. Moving on to fine motor objectives, we're introducing another new category of fine motor skills this week, which is a grasp. It's the gross or cylindrical grasp, which is squeezing your entire hand shut around an object. So again, these gross motor skills are equally as important to skills like precision in order to be able to write, even though it doesn't necessarily seem so at first. It's developing a lot of muscle in that hand to be able to sustain writing and to not tire as they hold a pencil and to write with it, and really develops that hand strength and the wrist strength. So a cylindrical grasp is the grasp that you use to hold a drink or a baseball bat, something of that nature. And we'll give you activity ideas to work on this. In addition to working on that grasp, you're going to select some activities to continue to work on finger isolation, the wrist extension and stability, and the open thumb web space, to continue to work on rotating the thumb around to be able to touch the tip of the thumb and the tip of the index finger together. So those are your fine motor objectives for this week. In social emotional objectives, we're working on relationship skills. With support, listen or demonstrate attention when others talk. So this is slightly hand in hand with the focus objective because it requires focus to patiently listen while someone else talks. And then responsible decision making. Understand and follow rules, limits, and expectations with prompting and assistance. So again, at this age, children do need lots of assistance, reminders, prompting, support, redirection, assistance with refocusing. We can't expect to just say something one time and then have them remember it or follow it. There's a lot of that assistance that's needed. So we'll give you some activities to work on those as well. And then finally, your project for this week is a fun sensory art experience. So you're going to create a piece of art that has a lot of different tactile surfaces, and this is really great for 2 different areas of focus. One is fine motor skills. So as you create this piece of art, your child is going to be working on a lot of the fine motor skills that are needed. This can be a super messy project. Just encourage you to just have fun with it. Let your child dive in and be creative and make a mess and really explore these different tactile sensations. And it's also great for working on language skills. This is where you can break out the thesaurus on your phone and look for different words to use to describe all of the different tactile sensations. Smooth and rough and bumpy and jagged and gritty, and just give them a lot of different vocabulary to describe and express what they're feeling. So it's great for working on language skills as well. And it's also just a lot of fun to make a mess and to see what your child will create with it. Children get super creative with this one and really surprise you with the creations that they make and with, you know, which sensations they like and don't like. So have fun with this one. And we'll see you back next week.